melts. Good. Sorry, I missed that. Okay, so when a glacier melts, it retreats. It's said to retreat. In other words, it just gets shorter because it's melted at the front. Okay, and another example would be if a volcanic eruption has occurred and volcanic lava has been deposited, then there's no soil, there's no plants, there's no animals, etc., and a primary succession will occur. Okay, all right. The first organisms that deposit themselves there, that start to live there, are plants, and they are plants that are very, very tough, very hardy. Okay? They are called pioneer species. So those are plants that are able to survive at first with no soil. Okay, so quite often they'll live in little cracks with their roots. Their roots are not very deep, and there's very little water there, okay, because there's no soil to hold the water, and there's nothing to shelter them from the wind, Joshua, and there's nothing to shelter them from the rain, if it rains, etc. So life is hard. Okay, they're very, very exposed, and these initial ones that colonize the new environment are called pioneer species. So the colonizing pioneer organisms typically have adaptations that enable them to survive in harsh environments where very high or very low temperatures are common, and dehydration, in other words drying out, occurs. They're usually small plant-like species such as lichen, algae, and moss. You guys all know what lichen is. Anybody doesn't? You all okay with lichen? Okay, moving on. Okay, algae and moss. After the pioneer species are established, larger plants can inhabit the area, and these, for example, would be grasses and shrubs. Okay, how does soil form? Come on, you geographers. Do any of you do geography? Erosion and weathering. Okay, so rock gets broken down and it forms little particles of soil, and then as soon as you've got something that lives there, then you can have something that dies there. And if you've got something that dies there, do you realize that the soil becomes more fertile? So soil initially is generally very infertile. Okay, so this is an example of lava. So this is a photograph of lava, looking at it from the top, and there's a little crack within the lava. And tiny little ferns are growing in that. So as generations of pioneer species live and die, they help to build the soil by breaking down the rock, and then they improve the soil by adding humus to it as they die, or it could even be part of the plant, like leaves die and drop off, and it becomes more fertile.
What's humus again?
Okay, so let's just make sure that you guys are able to spell this. So it is dead and decaying, and don't abbreviate. Decaying plant and animal matter. And what do you call it in your garden, Haley? There you go. Who composted? Okay, you happy? So it's basically compost, but correct scientific term is humus. Okay, and humus is very, very, very important for a soil. It doesn't just make a soil more fertile. What it also does is it acts as a sponge and holds water. So generally speaking, if there's no humus in the soil, when water falls onto soil, all that it does is percolates. Do you know the word percolates?
No.
Oh. What language do you guys speak? Okay. Percolates through between the soil particles and actually just drains away. Okay, Okay, so humus is between soil particles. It's just dead and decaying plant and animal matter. And what it does is it holds the water, and therefore it prevents the water from draining away totally, and so plants have got water available. And then the third thing that it does, and this is not a critical one, is it makes the soil darker. And by doing that, it actually makes the soil warmer. So in very cold areas, it makes the soil warmer, and therefore plant roots are stimulated to grow more.
So Auntie P, random question, would there be humus in like a clay biome? Like in like clay?
Very little humus. Because the particles of clay are so tiny, there's no spaces between them. So, very little. Okay, so after the pioneer species have grown and they're making soil and they're making the soil more fertile with humus, then they are replaced by different species over time. Okay, and the following species generally are slightly larger because now there's soil for them to grow in. They're more specialized. They grow taller than the other ones. They compete with the original pioneers for sunlight, and they win, and then the pioneers actually die out. Okay, they're replaced by the next ones. Now there are all sorts of plants growing there, and because there are all sorts of plants growing there, there are places where little animals can live. So insects and spiders. Now one of my grade 8s has just given me an example of an insect called a spider. Okay, insects and spiders are two different things. Quickly, one of the differences is, Jenna?
Spiders and insects. Not insects fly. I don't know.
Not all insects can fly. Give me an example of an insect that can't fly. Good. Some aphids can. Okay. Spiders, how many legs?
8.
How many legs?
6.
Good. Okay, not the same thing. So insects and spiders and other animals become part of their community as their energy requirements can now be met by the species that are there. Okay. And gradually the ecosystem develops and supplies of water and nutrients become more predictable. Grasses and other small plants invade and are available for herbivores, large and small, and now you start getting other animals going to live there. So this is an ecological succession, a primary ecological succession. It can take hundreds or thousands of years. So, bare rock, no soil. Okay. Colonized by pioneer species, for example, moss, which decomposes and creates a layer of topsoil. Grasses then grow, more nutrients in the soil allow for shrubs to grow, okay? And then finally, these bigger organisms grow, and these are called the climax species. Okay, so you have to know pioneer, climax. Primary succession, because there are no organisms, therefore there are no seeds there, and there's no soil there. Okay, so that's primary. Yeah.
And in our notes, it says that both bare-ground colonizers and then pioneers.
Read me the sentence.
So no, it's just like a little diagram. Bare-ground colonizers, pioneers.
Okay. No, just cross up colonizers and go for pioneers, bare ground pioneers. Okay, you may have a 1 minute squirm break. Joshua and Co. Read my lips. 1 minute. 1 minute. Sprint. Where are you going? No, you've just been to the toilet.